The sun was barely up when blue lights flashed across Harper Lake, bouncing like diamonds off the water. My son, Luke, was on the shore with a fishing rod in hand, looking puzzled when a squad car pulled up. I didn't need a second guess, this had HOA Karen written all over it. Karen, our neighborhood's self-appointed tyrant, stood there in her wide-brim hat, lips pursed like she'd bitten a lemon. She pointed at Luke and demanded fines and confiscation of his rod. She didn't know the twist. Luke wasn't just casting a line for fun. He had just returned from college, stepping into his hard-earned role as Wildlife Warden Chief of the entire county. And yes, that meant this exact lake technically fell under his jurisdiction. The scene would have been funny if it wasn't so frustrating. This lake wasn't HOA turf. My great-grandfather had built the dam here in 1874. Our family hadn't just owned this water, we'd safeguarded it for nearly 150 years. Yet Karen, who moved in 5 years ago, loved ordering people around like she was Napoleon with a clipboard. When the officer stepped forward, he looked uneasy. Karen barked, "He's trespassing. Confiscate that fishing pole immediately." My patience thinned, but instead of exploding, I gestured for Luke to speak. Luke stepped calmly toward the officer. "I'm Luke Harper, the Wildlife Warden Chief for Carson Valley County. I'm conducting an official population survey on these waters. This is also my family's private property." He offered to show credentials waiting in his truck. That hit the officer like a firework, his eyes widened. A warden chief, standing on his own family's lake. Suddenly, Karen's yelling about HOA rules looked less powerful and more, well, ridiculous. Karen sputtered, "He's lying, no kid is a warden chief. This lake is HOA property." I couldn't help but chuckle. "Karen, your HOA booklet doesn't override county records or 150 years of deeds. My son outranks your handbook by law." The officer straightened, clearly siding with us. "Ma'am, false reports are serious. If his credentials check out, you may be the one in trouble." Karen froze, her red lipstick twitching into silence. For once, her control slipped. And that's when I knew, we weren't just tangled with petty HOA rules. We were stepping into a full-on battle for truth, history, and home. After Karen stormed off in a huff, Luke and I stood by the water in silence. The lake glimmered calm, but I knew the storm had only begun. "Dad," Luke murmured, "she won't stop. She wants this lake." He was right. Karen had whispered and schemed for months about the HOA claiming control over the lake. But what she didn't understand was how deep its history ran. This wasn't just water, it was blood and legacy. We walked to the old barn, where a trunk of weathered papers had been locked away for decades. As we opened it, I told him about his great-grandfather, Samuel Harper. In 1874, Samuel had built the dam that turned a spring-fed creek into Harper Lake. Everyone laughed at his plan until drought struck and neighbors begged for a drop. His stubborn foresight had saved livelihoods, and planted the roots of our family's bond to this water. Inside the trunk lay every deed, map, and letter preserving that story. Luke gently picked up one paper, running his fingers over faded ink carved into history. The county recognized these documents. They weren't optional. They were the backbone of ownership. Luke's resolve hardened. "She can yell all she wants, but she can't erase this." His voice was steady, carrying that Harper stubborn streak from Samuel down to him. Karen, meanwhile, wasn't finished. We spotted her pacing her porch, phone glued to her ear. Anyone who knew Karen could guess, she was dialing up reinforcements. Neighbors, board members, maybe even lawyers. She wanted control of the lake not for community good, but for her ego. I put a hand on Luke's shoulder. Our family fought off railroads and county plans before. Now it's our turn. She underestimates us. Luke smiled faintly. Then she's about to find out what Harpers are made of. The lake shimmered in the setting sun, cottonwoods lining the shore like guardians. This wasn't an HOA pond. It was Harper Lake, defended generation after generation. Karen could bring her binders, her rules, even her lawyer. We had law, history, and a family legacy stronger than them all. 2 mornings later, a black SUV rolled up, the HOA cavalry. Karen sat smug in the passenger seat while HOA president, Mr. Dalton, climbed out adjusting his belt like a judge about to condemn us. "Mr. Harper," Dalton declared, "you're in violation of HOA guidelines. Unauthorized fishing, unregistered dock, misuse of community water feature." It was such a performance I almost laughed. "This isn't a community water feature, Dalton. It's private. Our family's land. Your rules don't apply." Karen jumped in, finger wagging. "The lake is visible from HOA property, therefore it falls under community aesthetics." Luke chuckled. "So my fishing pole is ruining the neighborhood view?" Karen's eyes narrowed. "Don't get smart. Remove the dock. Stop fishing. Permit an HOA contractor to test the water, or fines start tomorrow." She waved her clipboard triumphantly, as if the paper outweighed a century of deeds. Luke stepped forward, his calm voice slicing the air. "Ma'am, as Wildlife Warden Chief, I regulate this lake under state law. That means I outrank your booklet of bylaws. And if you keep interfering with my work, you may face charges yourself." Dalton's confidence faltered. The moment I pulled certified deeds from my folder, he went pale. "But Karen?" She doubled down, hissing threats of lawyers and escalation. When I mentioned that the sheriff, my cousin, would gladly handle trespassers, her bravado cracked for the first time. Still, her storm didn't blow over. That week she arrived with more board members and a so-called inspection team, clipboard army in tow. They accused us of maintenance violations and aesthetic crimes. Their decree: dismantle the dock in 7 days or pay $200 per day. That was the last straw. I looked Karen in the eye, voice unwavering. "Step on this property again, and you'll answer to the sheriff. This is the Harper family's lake, not HOA turf." Luke added, badge glinting in the sun, "And right now, you're interfering with official wildlife monitoring. One more step, and it's harassment on record." For a brief moment, the mighty HOA board stood speechless. Karen's knuckles tightened on her clipboard, but her soldiers looked ready to retreat. "We'll see you in court," she spat, spinning away. And that was fine by us. Because in court, facts matter. And facts were on our side. Karen wasn't bluffing. Days later, a gold-sealed letter arrived, a $1,000 fine and an order to attend an emergency HOA meeting. "Their big trial," I muttered, flipping through it. Luke smirked. "Let's bring everything, deeds, county stamps, even Grandpa's letters. She wants a show. We'll give her one." The community hall buzzed when we walked in. Neighbors watched like spectators at a boxing match. Karen stood front and center with Dalton, beaming like a queen ready to crown herself. Unauthorized fishing. Illegal dock. HOA aesthetics violations, Dalton declared. I set our folder on the table, calm as stone. Correction: private lake, private dock, documented by county law since 1874. Your rules stop at our property line. Karen sneered. Those dusty papers don't matter. This lake affects property values, we have control. That's when Luke stepped forward, showing his badge. I'm not just a fisherman. I'm County Wildlife Warden Chief, enforcing environmental law. Touch this lake or interfere with me, you're the one breaking the law. Gasps rippled through neighbors. I laid out certified deeds and documents, each stamped and signed. Dalton examined one, paling instantly. These weren't family keepsakes, they were legal proof. Karen sputtered, clinging to theatrics. We still vote. This board decides what harms the neighborhood. Luke chuckled, shaking his head. That old dock. It's a historic landmark. Ugly to you maybe, but older than every house in this subdivision. If you don't like the view, look elsewhere. Laughter erupted. Even board members smirked. Karen turned scarlet, glaring daggers as Dalton cleared his throat. Karen, these are official. We can't enforce rules on private land. No, she snapped, stomping a heel. But the room had shifted. The board members one by one nodded with Dalton, unwilling to follow her into obvious defeat. Karen, humiliated but defiant, finally hissed, "This isn't over." She stormed out, purse swinging. I glanced at Luke. Well, son. We didn't just win the room. We ended the debate. Luke smiled, steady and proud. We didn't change the rules, Dad. We just reminded them of the truth. In that hall, under flickering fluorescent lights, the HOA's imaginary rulebook had crumbled before history and law. In the days that followed, HOA chatter grew quiet. Karen's tantrum at the board meeting left her isolated. Neighbors who usually avoided us now waved and smiled, some even admitting Karen had bullied them into complaints. But her silence was deceptive. One morning, another formal notice arrived, this time a sheriff's complaint. But Sheriff Reynolds, my cousin, called me laughing. "Harper, we're not entertaining her nonsense anymore. If she keeps filing false reports, she'll be fined for harassment." That was a turning point. For the first time, the law wasn't just on our side, it turned against her. Karen had spent her power on empty threats, and her arsenal was empty. Then came a letter directly to Luke from the County Wildlife Department. It cemented Harper Lake as an official protected site under his authority. Translation: HOA could never interfere again without risking real charges. Luke held that letter like a medal. His legacy had just been written into law. That night, we sat by the old dock, moonlight glowing across waters Samuel Harper had created a century and a half ago. Luke cast a line and smiled. "You know, Dad, I always saw this lake as just a fishing spot. Now I realize, it's who we are." I nodded, proud beyond words. Exactly. This isn't about rods or docks. It's about family, truth, and knowing what's worth fighting for. Weeks later, peace finally returned to Harper Lake. No SUVs rolled on our drive. No fines appeared in our mailbox. Even Dalton retreated, apologizing awkwardly. Karen, rumor had it, was fined for her false complaints, and though she still sulked behind curtains, her voice no longer carried weight. Neighbors began dropping by not with complaints, but cornbread, brisket, and thanks. Mrs. Henderson, who lived here long before Karen, said gently, "She picked the wrong family to boss around. You reminded everyone we don't have to be afraid of her." Luke grinned, humble but proud. "We just wanted to protect what's ours." And that night, sitting under a sky lit with stars, I realized something important: this battle wasn't just about stopping Karen. It was about teaching my son the lesson every Harper had known: protecting what matters isn't just duty. It's who we are. Long after Karen fades into memory, Harper Lake will stand, calm and steady, carrying our reflection into the future.